Hey, good afternoon. My name is Tim Chandler, and as I stated, I am starting a movement for fathers' rights and father support in Escambia and Santa Rosa County and our areas here for Northwest Florida. So what I wanted to do, and I reached out, I've had several fathers that have reached back out to me, sent me their stories and all, and as I said, any story we post, we're going to have a little bit of evidence. We're not just throwing accusations out. We want to know what happened, and we want to be able to back that up. So this first veteran, and I'm going to share one or two stories a month. If we get more than that, we'll do 1 or 2 a week. But this first one, the veteran's not ready to be exposed yet, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. So I've taken precautions to black out the names on the paperwork and different stuff like that. But I want to tell you a story, and I got his paperwork right here. This veteran has been going through hassles with his ex and the system for about the past 10 or 11 years. The veteran was never arrested, never in trouble with the law, never even stood before a judge until he filed for divorce. And let me remind you, he filed for divorce. The moment he filed for divorce, all of a sudden he's abusive, he's a child abuser, he needs a restraining order, he's dangerous, he's a combat veteran, he's a trained killer, he's got PTSD, all these other things that were never a factor before. So I want you to understand everything that I'm about to tell you and show you. This has all happened while his ex has restraining order against him. So the last time she had him arrested was in 2017. And I want to show that. (2017). So I want to go down to where his attorney was speaking, and she says that he has quite a history of the violation of the injunctions. So, and if you look at the past history, the ex-wife comes around him a lot and then has him arrested. So, and I'm going to show some of that. So his attorney speaking and saying, at first glance, he does have quite a history of violation of injunctions, but I'd ask the court to consider that all those prior violations were also text messages. He's arrested now. 2017, he's arrested for a text message, and I'm going to show you the text message. Those prior violations were also text messages, and they are remote in time. I blocked out the name. Mr. So-and-so has been graduated out of the Veterans Court program on these cases, and he's doing quite well. We're here today to just ask that the GPS monitoring be removed. So he's got a GPS monitor on him. Now, I want you to understand. I want you to stay with me. He was arrested, spent 2 days in jail, and has a GPS monitor for this text message. I'm going to show you the text message at the end. We're here today just to ask the GPS monitor be removed. He's a 100% disabled veteran on a fixed income. I also have a witness who would be able to testify today that he lives and has lived within 5 or 6 minutes of Mrs. So-and-so for months. I believe since last August of last year, and there have been no problems with in-person contact. Mr. So-and-so has shared time sharing with his children, so he does have reason to contact his wife, and it says, oh, his ex-wife, by text message about the children. The judge says, okay. His attorney again says they've been doing exchanges through third parties and through school, which has been going fine. We would also argue this is a non-violent offense. There's been no allegations of him coming near her, and the GPS is a hardship with the expense, and it's just not necessary. So, and we'll go down. So his attorney says, I believe there's been no violations with the GPS since he's had it, and there was also have been no incidents with the ex-wife. And she says, and there have been incidents with the ex-wife, which would show that she is not in fear, in my opinion, and that I do have a witness who could testify to. So his attorney is saying, she's not in fear, and I have a witness that can contest to that about his ex coming around him. She goes down to say the overall view of this case is going to be that it's kind of vindictive. However, you will hear about the GPS today, and we just believe the GPS is not necessary. So we go down, they ask the state attorney. He starts to say, which the alleged victim is not there yet. And he says, I did speak with the victim on this case yesterday. She indicated that she is in fear. She's in fear. That's a big word that we use in court to get our way. We're in fear. And that she fears that the defendant may retaliate against her or her children. And I do apologize. This is state attorney. I do apologize. I intended to have her present, Your Honor. I didn't realize we were starting at 8:30 today. I just mistake the switch over of the new division. So he's just talking about that. But then it goes down. But she did indicate to me that she does want the GPS to remain active, and that she does believe that she needs it because she's afraid that without the GPS, he may come by to harass her in person, Your Honor. So his attorney speaks again. That's not in Mr. So-and-so's history of ever coming to harass her. He goes to the Veterans Center, which is right next to her work. Fairly often he has appointments there. He works nearby her home as well. He's been around. He's in her area all the time. And there have been no allegations that he has come near her, and he's not going to. The judge says, okay. Then his attorney says, and this was based on a text message, I believe, about the foreclosure of the party's home. Now, this is in May. The text message was sent in February. And after talking to the veteran and getting the whole story and him showing me all the text messages, stuff like that, she waited till March. I'm sorry, this wasn't May, March. He sent the message in February. She waited till March till he had the kids on spring break to have him arrested in front of the kids. I believe about the foreclosure of the party's home. So also they had a house that was bought by his VA loan. Since she had a restraining order and says she's in fear for her life, he had to leave the home, and he got his own apartment. 3 years she lived in the home and didn't make a payment. It got foreclosed on. That's what the whole message is about. That the bank messaged him and he messaged her about selling the home. So, so this is the state attorney. There are also allegations in the report, Your Honor, that he sent a letter to her place of business alleging that, I believe, I have a copy of the alleged letter, Your Honor, that she was, then it just goes blank. His attorney says, and again, that would not be contact with her. The state attorney says mentally, so I guess it's mental contact. The judge says let him finish, and then the other attorney can respond. The state attorney says, Your Honor, let me see if I got it here. Yes, here it is. Basically, Your Honor, 2 letters and her mugshot. She was actually arrested for breaking in his home while having a restraining order. So basically, Your Honor, it was 2 letters and a mugshot of the victim that he alleged sent to her place of employment, indicating that she was mentally unstable. I'm not going to say where she works. The victim believes that this letter was sent to her place of work to threaten her employment, and she believes, as long as she believes that it was the defendant who sent the letters. So no proof, no evidence, just belief. He asked if he could approach, so he approached, showed the judge. His attorney didn't object. So here's the state attorney, because the alleged victim finally shows. And Your Honor, this is the victim. She just arrived. So let's go down. So this is where the state attorney starts to question her. Now, you have to keep in mind, this is 2017. He's been arrested. 2017. Miss So-and-so, do you believe that you need the defendant to remain monitored by GPS for your... Oh, and then, okay, safety. All right, I'm sorry. Safety. The judge says, excuse me. The state attorney says, yeah. The judge says, I need her to state her name for the record. So he apologized. She stated her name. She said, go ahead. And he asked her again, do you believe that the defendant needs to remain monitored by GPS for your safety? She said, I do. And he says, why is that? Because of the continued violations and the continuous contact. The judge says, ma'am, can you speak up for the record? Just saying she can't hear her. So the witness says, he will not leave me alone. And the judge says, what do you mean by that? He continued to contact me and harass me. The judge says, by what means? The witness says, I'm sorry. The judge says, by what means? How? Well, in the past, he drove his truck through my garage. And then stops. His attorney says, I object to relevance. The judge says, okay, do you want to say anything about her objection to relevance? And the state attorney says, I believe it's very relevant. If the defendant has previously driven or attempted to drive his truck through the victim's garage, is to show an intent to possibly attempt to harm her, Your Honor, and the necessity of the GPS monitor. The judge says, okay. So his attorney says, can we have a timeline? So I'm gonna skip. So here we go. Let's have a timeline. When did this happen? Now remember, this was a hearing in 2017. 2014. 2014. If it happened. There's no police report. There's no proof that it ever happened. But we're in 2017. And our basis for keeping a restraining order and keeping a GPS monitor on a combat disabled veteran is because of something that supposedly happened in 2014. So he goes on to ask, you indicated to me that you were in fear for your life. She says, yes, I'm in fear for the defendant. She says, this has been going on for years, for like 4 years, Your Honor. And he has even been violent towards you in the past. As the state attorney says, so he's been violent toward you in the past. She said, yes. Do you recall what the nature of those past incidents of violence were? Again, his attorney says, Your Honor, if we could have a time given with these allegations. So the state attorney says, will you explain what happened? Could you please state when those incidents happened? So I'm going to read her word for word. Yes, if I could get my folder, I have everything written down. So she has to look at her folder to find out when she was violently assaulted. So he asks, Your Honor, is it okay if she retrieves the folder? The judge says, yes, she can retrieve whatever she needs to recollect her memory. And then so the state attorney says, go ahead. She says, this is the letter. And he said, the letter? The state attorney says, the letter. And she says, from the last bond reduction, the things that he did. And the state attorney says, I understand. And then the witness says, the emails. That's her only statement, the emails. He says, do you have the documentation for the past times of when he committed the domestic violence battery? She says, I have the police report. The court says, okay. The state attorney says, okay, is that incident in 2014 or 15? The witness says, yes. The court says, can she look at the things to refresh her recollection, but this you can't use as far as a hearing? The state attorney says, yes, Your Honor. The judge says, guide her in her testimony. So the witness says, so she hasn't answered the question yet about any domestic violence. So she says, we have a pending court case. Nothing to do with this case. We have a pending court case. By the way, any time that this veteran filed to see his kids more or anything like that, he was arrested for domestic violence. Every time he was arrested, there was a pending court case for him to have more visitation, more time with his kids. So the state attorney says, I understand. All I want to know is, do you recall when those past incidents of domestic violence were and what happened? She says, I have a phone record where he contacted me. Again, not answering the question. And this is typical for those that lie in court because they go all around and play victim. And then they shed some tears, and that way they avoid ever having to answer the question or show any evidence or proof. So he says, I understand all. What the judge is wanting to know is the past incidents of violence when they were and what happened. The last time we had contact physically was when he showed up at my work and violated the restraining order. So he said, I understand, but what? And then the judge says, what was that this year, ma'am? Was that? She's like, no. 2 months ago, 6 months ago, when was it? So now the judge getting irritated. No, he, and this is the witness, no, I just have text messages and emails on my phone. Still has not answered one thing about domestic violence, one thing about any kind of violent contact that he has had with her. So the state attorney says she's asking when it was that he showed up at your work. When he showed up to your work, screaming and yelling, you indicated. I believe that was June of 2014. Again, we're in 2017. So about 3 years ago, yes. Okay. But the injunction that I have had, this is her, in place since February of 2015. So she's claiming that nothing has happened since 2014, but she got an injunction in 2015. February 2015, which happens to be around one of the kids' birthdays. So the court says, all right, have there been any acts of physical violence towards you since June 2014? We have, and the witness says, we have no. We have a restraining order. So we have third parties. We have not been in contact. Why are we here today? I mean, that would have been a good question. Have there been any threats of violence since 2014? This is the judge. There's been inappropriate text messages. The judge says, ma'am, answer my question, please. Have there been any threats of violence since 2014? She says, not that I can recall. The court says, has there been any violations of the injunction pertaining to him either coming to your house or your work since 2014? The witness, not for coming to my work or coming to my house, but there have been violations. The court says, and have all those violations been text related? The witness, text and emails. And the court says, and they did not or contain threats of violence. No, Your Honor. The court says, okay, ma'am, you can have a seat. So then they call the other witness in. I'm going to skip that part. That just confirmed that she goes around him all the time. And I want to go all the way to the end. Where the state attorney tries to argue, even though his own witness says, I haven't seen him, he hasn't contacted me, he hasn't done anything since 2014. We're going on 3 years now. He tries to play back and say it's because he's had an ankle monitor for the last month. So, so the judge says to him, I'm sorry, what is your name? And he gives her name. And she says, all right. And she says, I hear what you're saying regarding violations since it has been placed on that there have been no violations. Not necessarily meaning it's not needed. However, the witness's testimony, your witness testimony was that there have been no threats of violence since 2014. He says, correct. Then the court says there have been no violations of the injunction related to him coming to her house, coming to her work, or threatening to do so, or threats of violence since 2014. He says yes. And the court says that's before this happened, well before he was on this GPS monitor. Yes, Your Honor. So what's the problem? Why is the state so bent on disciplining an innocent man, a veteran? So the judge says, I'm taking it off. All right, so that's the end of that. So the judge takes it off. So in 2017 was the last time he got arrested. The so-called victim admits that nothing has happened since 2014. Do you know here we are in 2026 and he still has a restraining order? Yeah, still has a restraining order. So here's the other, and I've been very careful not to disclose who he is, who she is, or anything like that. I'm taking every precaution. And I'm hoping this is going to show up on the video, but I have all the copies if anybody that needs it wants it. So, first husband she had arrested for domestic violence. Second man she had arrested for domestic violence. I blacked out all the names. So, here she is. I'm at your house. I've been watching you. That is stalking. It's online stalking. It's a felony. She's never charged. It's while having a restraining order. He had to get a no trespassing order against her. And if you see at the bottom, it even says that she has a restraining order against him and he does not want her at his apartment. Then she gets arrested for breaking into his apartment. So she says, I'm at your house. I've been watching you for 2 days. He has to get a no trespassing order. Then she breaks into his apartment. And she still has a restraining order. This is Father's Day. She refused to let him have his truck or get his kids. And it says she's not letting him leave. He is trying to get his things and his wife won't let him leave. She's keeping his truck from him. That's false imprisonment. That's another felony. Here was in 2017 when this didn't work, when she couldn't keep him in jail for this. She called, he was picking his kids up for an after-school care. She shows up at the place and tries to violate the restraining order. So, there's absolutely no reason to believe she's in fear for her life. It's obvious, and she continues to try to have him arrested. And so this goes back to my question. And he has showed up to court, and he has showed this stuff, and they have kept a restraining order against him. And he's got much more. He's got videos of her coming around, missed phone calls. So that was another thing. Where was that at? There it is. So she calls from her work phone so she can still pretend that she's in fear for her life because they weren't supposed to talk on the phone. And I want you to look, incoming call, 1 hour and 43 minutes. So she continues to come around him. She continues to harass him. She continues to make false statements and try to have him arrested. She continues to pretend she's in fear for her life, while stalking him online, breaking in his house, coming around him, constantly contacting him. So why do we need to change things in Florida? Why do we need to build organizations and structures to protect our fathers, to protect our men, to protect our veterans? Because we're being mistreated. Because our rights are being violated. And you know what's crazy? I'll share this video and I'll share this information, and there will be people that get upset that I'm sharing it. People in positions of power to make changes. Instead of being upset that it happened, they'll be upset that I shared it. So, again, I have showed you a lot of stuff today, and that's just a little bit of it. That is just a little. This veteran has a whole file on these past 11 years, 10, 11 years. So, I'm going to continue to show these videos. I'm going to interview other veterans, other fathers. And we're going to make some changes because it's not right. It is not right. So a father should not have to sell everything he owns and go bankrupt to fight for his children. An innocent man should not have to go years with a restraining order and nonsense and be in fear to go anywhere in public because if he sees her, she could have him arrested. But she can break in his house. She can stalk him online. And nobody will do anything about it. Nobody. Everybody says take the high road. Everybody says, hey, just let it go. But his rights are being violated. The law is for him as well. So we're going to continue this until we make some changes. So that's all we can do. I appreciate you, everybody that stands behind me. I know that I know it's much needed. So let's quit saying the system's broke. Let's fix it. Love you.